Here's something that sounds impossible. An artificial intelligence model can slowly lose its grip on reality, and nobody inside the company will notice for months. Not a hack, not a virus. The model simply drifts away from the truth, one tiny step at a time, until the answers it gives are confidently, dangerously wrong. This week, a startup called ZeroDrift raised $10 million to stop exactly that from happening. Think of it like this. Imagine you hired a brilliant assistant who was flawless on day one, but every single day the world shifts a little and your assistant keeps using yesterday's rulebook. 6 months later, they sound just as confident, just as polished, but half of what they tell you is quietly out of date. You would never catch it, because nothing ever dramatically broke. That slow rot is called model drift, and it is the silent nightmare of every company running AI in production today. ZeroDrift's whole pitch is that the biggest threat to an AI model is not a hacker on the outside. It is the model on the inside, drifting away from reality while everyone assumes it is fine. The investors clearly agree, because they just handed this small team $10 million to build an early warning system for machine minds. Over the next few minutes, I'll show you how AI models actually break, why the smartest engineers keep missing it, and what this funding round means for every app on your phone. And here's where it gets interesting. To understand why ZeroDrift exists, you have to understand a strange truth about AI. A model is basically a snapshot of the world, frozen at the moment it was trained. Picture taking a perfect photograph of a busy street. That photo is accurate the instant you snap it, but the street keeps moving. Cars drive off, shops close, seasons change. A week later, your photo is still sharp, still detailed, and increasingly wrong. That is exactly what happens to an AI model after it goes live. The data it learned from was true in the past, but the real world keeps evolving underneath it. A fraud detection model trained last year has never seen this year's scams. A model that predicts what customers want has never seen the latest trend. The gap between what the model believes and what is actually true grows wider every single day. Industry studies suggest that a typical production model can lose 10 to 20% of its accuracy within the first year, and most teams have no idea it's happening. Why? Because the model never crashes. It keeps returning answers, fast and confident, so the dashboards stay green and everyone moves on. Companies pour millions into building these systems, then treat them like a kitchen appliance you plug in and forget. The training gets all the glory. The slow decay afterwards gets ignored. ZeroDrift is betting that this blind spot is about to become one of the most expensive problems in tech. But here's what most coverage gets wrong. Most people assume drift means the model gets corrupted, like a file going bad. It doesn't. The model's code never changes a single line. What changes is the world it's being asked about. Engineers actually split this into two flavors, and the difference matters. The first is called data drift. This is when the inputs the model sees start looking different from its training data. Imagine a doctor trained only on adult patients, suddenly handed a waiting room full of children. The doctor isn't broken, but the patients no longer match the training. The second flavor is concept drift, and this one is sneakier. Here the relationship between cause and effect itself changes. Picture a spam filter. For years, a message screaming about a free prize was obviously junk. Then marketing teams started writing real emails that sound exactly the same. The words didn't change, but their meaning flipped. The model is now confidently wrong about the very thing it was built to judge. The truly dangerous part is feedback loops. A recommendation engine shows you videos, you click, and those clicks become its next training signal. It slowly learns from its own behavior, like a photocopier copying a copy of a copy until the picture is mush. Each step looks fine. The damage only shows up after hundreds of invisible steps. ZeroDrift's technology is built to measure these shifts mathematically, watching the statistical shape of the data in real time. When the shape moves, an alarm goes off. Here's the twist nobody expected. Let's make this real, because drift isn't a theory. It has already caused some spectacular failures. Take the early days of pandemic shopping. Demand forecasting models at major retailers were trained on years of normal buying habits. Then, almost overnight, everyone bought toilet paper and hand sanitizer. The models had never seen anything like it, so they kept ordering as if it were a quiet Tuesday. Shelves emptied, while the AI calmly predicted business as usual. That is data drift hitting at full speed. Or consider medical AI. A skin cancer detector trained mostly on images from one type of camera can quietly fail when a hospital upgrades its equipment. Same disease, slightly different pixels, and suddenly the model's accuracy drops in a way no patient would ever see coming. Then there's the financial world. Fraud models trained on yesterday's scams are blind to tomorrow's. Criminals literally probe these systems, watching what gets blocked, then changing their tactics until the model waves them through. Every undetected drift is money walking out the door. Studies estimate poor model maintenance costs enterprises hundreds of millions of dollars a year in bad decisions, and most of it is never traced back to drift because the model never threw an error. It just slowly got dumber while looking brilliant. This is the exact pain ZeroDrift is selling a cure for, and it's why investors moved fast with $10 million. This is where it gets complicated. So how is this different from what companies already do? Here's the uncomfortable answer. For years, the standard way to catch a failing model was to wait for a human to complain. A customer notices bad recommendations. An analyst spots weird numbers. Someone files a ticket. By then, the model has been quietly wrong for weeks, and the bad decisions are already baked in. It's like only discovering your car's brakes are worn out when you fail to stop at a junction. The next approach was basic monitoring, tracking whether the system is up, fast, and not throwing errors. But that's like checking that a smoke detector has power without ever checking if it can actually smell smoke. The model is online, responding in milliseconds, looking perfectly healthy, while its answers rot from the inside. ZeroDrift flips the whole model around. Instead of watching the machinery, it watches the meaning. It continuously compares the live data flowing in against the world the model originally learned, and it scores how far apart they've drifted. The moment that gap crosses a threshold, engineers get an alert that says, in plain terms, your model is starting to lose touch with reality. Think of it as a continuous health monitor strapped to the AI's chest, reading its pulse every second rather than waiting for it to collapse. Traditional tools tell you the model is alive. ZeroDrift tells you whether the model is still right. That difference is the entire $10 million bet. But here's the kicker. You might be thinking this is a problem for big tech companies, not for you. But here's the thing. You are surrounded by drifting models every single day, and you never see them. The app that approves your loan, the filter that decides which emails reach you, the system that flags your bank card as suspicious, the engine that recommends your next show, all of them are AI models quietly aging in the background. When one of them drifts, you feel it as a small, baffling injustice. A legitimate payment gets declined. A perfect job application gets filtered out. A medical scan gets misread. You blame bad luck or a glitch, when the real culprit is a model that slowly lost its grip and nobody was watching. As AI spreads into more decisions that shape real lives, undetected drift stops being a technical nuisance and becomes a question of fairness and safety. Regulators are starting to notice too. New AI rules emerging across Europe and the United States increasingly demand that companies prove their models stay accurate over time, not just on launch day. That turns drift detection from a nice-to-have into a legal requirement, and suddenly a tool like ZeroDrift isn't optional, it's compliance. That's the quiet genius of this funding round. They're not selling a feature. They're selling the seatbelt that an entire industry is about to be forced to wear. Here's what the headlines aren't telling you. Let's get practical, because you don't need a $10 million budget to think like a drift detective. Whether you run a business or just use AI tools, here's how to stay one step ahead. First, never trust a model just because it's confident. Confidence and correctness are completely different things, and a drifting model is the most confident liar in the room. If an AI tool starts giving answers that feel subtly off, take it seriously instead of assuming the machine knows best. Second, watch for changes in your own world. If your customers, your data, or your environment have shifted recently, a new product, a new season, a new type of user, assume any model touching that data is now partly blind. The bigger the change, the bigger the drift. Third, demand freshness. Ask whether the AI systems you rely on are retrained or rechecked regularly, or whether they've been quietly running untouched since launch. A model that hasn't been reviewed in a year is a photograph of a world that no longer exists. Fourth, look for a feedback signal. The best teams measure how often their AI's predictions actually turn out correct, and they track that number over time. If accuracy is sliding, drift is the prime suspect. This is exactly the discipline ZeroDrift is trying to automate and sell at scale, turning a habit only elite teams practice into a button anyone can press. Now here's where the real story starts. So here's what this means for you and for the industry. We are entering an era where building an AI model is the easy part. Keeping it honest, year after year, is the real challenge, and almost nobody is set up to do it. ZeroDrift's $10 million raise is a signal flare. It says the smart money now believes the next big battle in AI isn't about building bigger, flashier models. It's about stopping the models we already depend on from quietly rotting while we trust them with our money, our health, and our decisions. The takeaway is simple. Every AI system around you has a hidden expiry date, and the companies that survive the next few years will be the ones who treat their models like living patients that need constant checkups, not appliances you plug in and forget. Watch for more startups in this space, because where one raises $10 million, a dozen rivals follow. The whole category of AI monitoring is about to explode, and it will quietly decide whether the tools you rely on stay trustworthy. If this opened your eyes to the invisible machinery shaping your daily life, do me a favor and follow for daily AI news, because this is the kind of story the big headlines keep missing, and I'll keep breaking it down for you, one surprising development at a time. The models are drifting. Now you know how to tell.